your host, Michelle Burgess, on behalf of Case Western Reserve University's Women in Tech Initiative. In today's discussion, we'll be joined by Carmen Fontana from Centric Consulting. I wanted to develop like a common ground of what AI looks like, machine learning and deep learning. So to the everyday person, can you explain what those key principles are? And then I'd love to hear more about how deep learning can impact machine learning.
Absolutely. And you are not alone. There is a lot of ambiguity, a lot of confusion about those terms. I personally am not somebody who gets really hung up on proper definitions because I feel like it creates false barriers that keep people from entering a space. And that said, the general words I tend to use when to explain those different spaces. Artificial intelligence, it's kind of a catch-all term. You hear it all the time. It's an umbrella term. It really means things that learn, process that information, and act on it independent of humans. The humans still have to program it, at the beginning, but over time, they'd be able to learn and act on their own. So AI could be machine learning, but it could also be more broad, such as autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. It could be virtual reality. There's just a lot of things that you can stuff under that AI term. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. It can be a standalone thing itself, or it can be something that fuels self-driving cars or virtual reality, etc. Machine learning is essentially a mathematical way of teaching computers to learn. It is, if you've taken linear algebra, the students, it is heavy on linear algebra, and it really is a way to just enable knowledge transfer on the computers. Deep learning is another subset, so we're kind of nested here, the Russian dolls here. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning, which uses neural networks, which is a sophisticated algorithm. You'll see deep learning particularly used for visual recognition, so being able to understand what images are, as well as voice recognition or speech text recognition. So think Alexa, that sort of thing. So it is machine learning with more sophisticated algorithms at its thing. End of the day, artificial intelligence at the top level is, it's blurring between what it means, because everything is going to be powered by AI, it seems like, in the path where we're going.
Thank you for helping clarify what all of that looks like. So, and with moving forward, like with the different types of learning, like what are some important principles that we need to take note of for that?
So my senior project back in my case days, late 90s, was using machine learning to model climate change in a certain region of the world. At that time, our tooling was very minimal. We had to write the lines of code ourselves. Our computers were limited to whatever we could find in the computer labs. The power wasn't there to really do very deep algorithms. And we couldn't process that much data. Once again, we were limited by the hardware that we had on hand. While it was top of the line, it was still the late 90s. And so my phone probably is more powerful than those at this point. So it's been a really interesting journey for me to see how artificial intelligence, particularly machine learning, has changed over the 20-some years since I've been an undergrad. And particularly in the last 5 or so years has it really accelerated, because now we have cloud computing, which allows us to be able to process way more data to assist in the learning process. More data equals better learning. And allows us to be able to use more computationally heavy algorithms. So neural networks, they require a lot of calculations. We couldn't do that previously. Now we can do that. The other big advancement is that machine learning has become a little bit more democratized. Before, you really had to understand data science, and you practically had to be a PhD, or in my case, you had to have a PhD advising you on your project. And now we have things like low code and no code machine learning, where people who just have a foundational layer can build machine learning models and spin them up and use them right away. And that's important, because if you want machine learning and the intelligence that come with it to be available to all kinds of problems and all kinds of businesses, you have to make it accessible to all. So it's been really exciting to see how artificial intelligence and particularly machine learning has evolved over the last 20 years, thanks to the advancements in technology.
Did you watch that documentary by chance? It was on Netflix regarding social media.
I haven't, it's on my list because that's actually a soapbox topic of mine to get off
Okay.
track here is I see with artificial intelligence what happened with social media over the last couple of years. So when we started with social media, super fun, connect the world, isn't this great, blah, blah, blah. And then over time, it evolved and we really saw that there's a dark side from a mental health standpoint, but also it can be co-opted by nefarious global entities. It just, there's certainly a downside to social media. And I worry with artificial intelligence that we're going down that path. Social media, it took us a while to learn those hard lessons. And we're still kind of in the honeymoon phase with AI. Isn't it great? We can do all these cool things. But we're not always thinking about the downside in terms of surveillance, about mental health. There's just, other things that we have to think about when we're talking about AI. AI can potentially be very biased. And so circling back, that's why it's really important to understand ethics and law and humanity in addition to technology so that you are implementing technology in a way that's thoughtful and mindful of the world around you.
Are there any principles or general concepts that you kind of go back to or that you think about when you're thinking about AI and ethics and humanities? Like, are there any common important ideas and themes that students should be aware of in that space?
We are technologists, so we always want to lead with the technology and figure out the pieces behind that. And one lesson I have learned over the course of my career is you need to put people first, then process, then the technology. So understand what is the problem that you're solving and how it will affect the people around you. Then understand how will processes have to change. And then finally figure out the technology. When we lead with technology, that's when we have big problems down the line.